Bismillahirrahmanirrahim, and welcome again to our third session in the Project Management Professional course. And as you already know, we started explaining again few basic things about the business context and how to use project management as a tool to realize the business strategic objectives using the OPM, Organizational Project Management. So we basically explained in the last lecture what's the relationship between project management, program management, and portfolio management, and how to organize projects into programs and projects and programs into portfolios that support strategic objectives. We call that the OPM, the Organizational Project Management, right? So if you don't have any question, we move on and we continue explaining about the business context. And again, you will have like 8% of the PMP exam questions focusing on the business context. So it's not that large number of questions, but I think it's fairly easy to answer those questions if you understand well the business context. Okay, so moving on, one of the most important things that the project manager should take into consideration is what we call tailoring. You know that each project by definition is unique, and each organization as well is unique too, and even the industry that the project is in might has some certain specific, unique attributes. And for that reason, we need to tailor our way of managing projects. We need to tailor our project management methodology and approach according to the proper life cycle, for instance, right? We explained a lot about the development approaches, the life cycle development approaches, right? In the past lecture, we explained the traditional way of managing projects or the waterfall, and then we explained the iterative approach, the incremental approach, and the agile approach, right? So basically, when you want to set up your approach of how to manage the project in hand, these are the recommended steps that you go with. And tailoring again is very important because you don't have something like one size fits all for all the projects that you will have the same methodology or you'll have the same approach. This is completely wrong. And by the way, sometimes we notice that a lot in different organizations. They create an approach and they try to apply the approach in all the projects that they have. And this is completely wrong because every project is unique and every context is unique. And you or the project manager should be able to tailor the approach correctly. Otherwise, you will end up using possibly extra processes or extra documents that are not needed to manage your project or that don't actually deliver any value or add any value to the project management effort. So basically, you need to tailor. You need to make sure that you are tailoring your approach in a very suitable way that makes sure of adding value without sacrificing any other, details or any other important aspects of the project. So you need to create or come up with the best tailored approach that fits the project. So these are the recommended steps that you might want to go through when you want to tailor the approach or create again the best approach to manage your project. So first of all, you select the approach in general, whether you want to manage your project in a traditional way or in an iterative way or an incremental way. So basically, you select the general approach. And then you tailor that according to the organization, because again, each organization is a special case, is a unique organization. You don't have two 100% similar organizations. Each organization has its own uniqueness. So basically, you want to take the approach that you have selected and make sure that this approach will work in this organization and the context that the organization has. So some organizations, for instance, have a lot of, policies, procedures, processes that you want to comply with or that you must to comply with. While other organizations have probably more flexibility and you can use a more flexible approach and so on. So you need to make sure that you tailor your approach correctly and to the degree that fits the organizational context. And then step 3, you go to the project itself, and according to the project complexity, according to the project simplicity, according to the project size, you again take the approach and tailor it. What are the documents that I need to use in this project that I might not use in other projects, for instance, because this project is a lot more simpler than other projects, right? So basically, according to the project size, according to the project complexity, according to the project need, you tailor again your approach. You select the right documents or artifacts that you want to use with your project management approach. You select the right tools. You select the right processes. So again, to make sure that you are using a proper management approach that will fit exactly the project need. Okay. Last but not least, step 4, you start using the approach that you have tailored, but again, and down the road, you will find out that this approach can be enhanced, can be improved one way or another. So you apply a kind of continuous improvement for the approach that you have created, just again to make sure that you are using the best approach possible in order to deliver the best results for the project that you are managing. So tailoring is very important, again, very important effort that you need to do as a project manager. And for that reason, the PMBOK guide, the 7th version, as I mentioned earlier, have dedicated a section in the book dedicated for tailoring. They explained more about tailoring, but actually this is what we need to do. Now, one important thing here to note that you won't be able to create this tailored approach until you have really the expertise to do it. So we don't expect, for instance, an entry-level project manager, someone who has just started his career as a project manager. We don't actually expect from them to create tailored approaches, because we understand that this takes actually someone who's experienced. It takes an experience, to create a tailored approach. But we wanted to let you know that this is one important thing that you need to think of when you want to manage your project. Okay, does that make sense to you? So this is about tailoring, okay? And tailoring is very important. You don't use the same approach, the same management approach for any project that you manage. No, each project you manage will have a different approach, a different tailored approach. We might have, again, some general guidelines, but again, you need to tailor those according to your project needs, okay? So this is what we wanted to explain about tailoring. Now let's move on to another point that we also mentioned earlier, which are the business documents. Remember the business documents that we have mentioned when we explained the project life cycle, specifically when we explained the pre-project work, right? The phase that we do before even the project launches, the pre-project work, where we kind of develop a business case or a feasibility study in order to make sure that we are launching the right project, right? So we mentioned at that point that we will develop, or the organization will develop, or the parties, or the responsible parties, for instance, the business analyst, will develop some documents that will indicate the need and the business case and the benefits of the project, right? And we call those documents the business documents because they are actually created before the project. So they are not created as a part of the project. No, they are created before the project, and they are created by the business or the business analysts. And the reason is, again, to give a recommendation of go or no go for the project, right? So we mentioned basically the business case, or specifically the business case and the benefits management plan. So let's get now to know a little bit more about for instance, the benefits management plan. What are the contents of the benefits management plan? I think we explained that earlier, but just to remind you. So basically the benefits management plan, which is again not a part of the project management plan, the benefits management plan is developed during the pre-project work, and it outlines the following. It outlines the targeted benefits. So what are the benefits that we are targeting from creating or from launching this project? Again, those benefits can be tangible or intangible. You might want to launch a project just to increase the customer awareness of your brand, for instance. And this is not tangible, not quite tangible, right? You might launch a project just to enhance the customer satisfaction level. Okay, so they can be tangible, they can be financial, or they can be something that is not tangible or not financial at all. So again, what are the targeted benefits? Strategic alignment. So how is this project strategically aligned? Basically, how does this project support the strategic objectives of the company? So this is a very important thing. I want to make sure that any project that we are launching will support, will help us achieve one of the strategic objectives. You cannot launch a project unless you are sure that this project will support, will help achieve a strategic objective. And that's why we use the OPM, right? We wanted to make sure that each project is aligned or is grouped within some of the programs, and the program is contained with a portfolio, and the portfolio points to a certain strategic objective. And by doing this, we are making sure that all projects are strategically aligned. They are not like launched to be just out there and don't support any strategic objective, right? Time frame. The benefits management plan would also indicate the time frame of achieving those benefits, because some of those benefits might be achieved during the project. Some of those benefits might be achieved at the end of the project. Some of those benefits might not achieved until after the project. For instance, you want to build a tower. Okay, so your project is building a tower. And the benefit is, let's say that we have a financial benefit, because after the tower is built, we want to rent it out to people, to public. So when would the benefits be realized in this situation? After the project finishes, and probably even after the project finishes in 2, 3 months, 4 months, we don't know exactly, but you will not have those benefits until the project completely finishes, and after we start, advertising the apartments and so on. So basically benefits can take some time until they are realized, okay? By the feasibility study, Malik asks how the time frame can be confirmed before the project starts. By doing the feasibility study. This is why we do feasibility study. The feasibility study helps you indicate or helps you decide when should those benefits be realized, at which point in time, or at what milestone, or at what time frame. So that's why we conduct business benefits, right? And then we set or we assign benefits owners. It might be one owner or different owners, but we need people to be responsible for tracking those benefits. So those are the people that we call benefit owners. Those are the people responsible for tracking the benefits, measuring the benefits, making sure benefits are realized. By the way, there's a publication from the PMI. The PMI has a book called, I think, the BRM standard. I don't really recall if it's a standard or it's a guide. I think it's a standard, the BRM, the Benefits Realization Management. And now this is a very important thing, because again, we want to make sure that every project that we are launching has benefits, and those benefits will be realized. Okay. Metrics, how do you want to measure those benefits? Again, you might have some intangible benefits, but you need to find a way to measure them. So you need to identify some metrics of measuring them, whether it's, for instance, the customer satisfaction index, whether it's, for instance, the percent of people that heard about your brand or have a certain perception about your brand. So you need to find a metric to measure those benefits. And last but not least, you might also want to include in the benefits management plan risks that might, threaten the realization of those benefits. So you want also to make sure that those risks are identified and we have kind of plan to mitigate them, right? So those are the outlines of the benefits management plan that you might want to include. Again, it's not the project manager who develops the benefits management plan. It's basically a business analyst or a consulting company or a consultant, whether it's internal or external consultant. But the benefits management plan is a very important input for the project manager. As a project manager, I need this document because I want to be completely aware of what are the targeted benefits, how is this project strategically aligned, what is the time frame of realizing those benefits, who are the benefit owners, how can we measure those benefits, what are the risks that might threaten the realization of those benefits. Okay, so it's very important for me as a project manager to have access to this document. Okay, and this takes us to another question. How do you actually measure the success of your project? How do we measure the success of our project? Now, previously, the traditional way of measuring success of any project was as following, was actually completely dependent on the core constraints. Remember the core constraints of the projects that we explained earlier? The scope, the schedule, the cost, and the quality, right? So since those are the major or the core constraints of any project, so previously people tend to define project success as completing the scope or finishing the scope of the project within the schedule specified, within the cost estimated or approved, within quality metrics requested. So that was the traditional way of defining the success of a project. If a project finishes on time, on cost, within quality requirements and metrics, then it's considered a success. But later on, someone asked, what if the project finishes on time and within cost and quality requirements, but it did not deliver the benefits that the project was originally launched to achieve? Would that also be considered a success? For instance, we built that tower within the specified time, within the specified budget, within the quality requirements, and everything went well. But we could not rent out any of the apartments, or we rented only 10% or 20% of the apartments to the public. It did not deliver the benefits. Then would that project be considered a success or not? Now, the new definition of project success basically relies on achieving or realizing the benefits. So it's very important for the project to realize the benefits that the project was launched to achieve, in order to make sure, or in order to define it as a successful project. Okay, it was not an objective, it was a benefit. Objective is to build a tower. This is the project objective. The objective is to build a tower that has, I don't know, 40 levels, that has that number of apartments with those quality requirements. So this is the objective. But the benefit is we have financial benefits. We wanted to achieve some financial benefits of renting out the project, renting out the tower. Okay. No, it's not the responsibility of the project manager to do anything about the operation, because after you finish the tower, you turn it out to, or you hand it out to the operation, and the operation takes care of the rest. But again, this is not your responsibility whether benefits in this particular example are realized or not. But in other projects where the benefits might be requested to be achieved within the project, then it might be your responsibility. Or even if in this also specific situation, you as a project manager, you understand that the benefits requested in this project is financial benefits that you want to achieve by renting out the tower. So you want to make sure that you are creating really the tower within the specified quality requirements, within everything that suits people or makes it attractive to people, and so on. So you keep that in your mind. Again, as a project manager, I need to know the benefits in order to make sure that whatever we are doing with the team, we are targeting the benefits. It will not, threaten achieving the benefits. It will not hinder achieving the benefits, and so on. Now, whether those benefits will be achieved in or within the time of the project or after the time the project has finished, that's another subject. Okay. I didn't actually hear of that term, project landing. It might be used in a specific context, but what we usually again use is, or differentiate, is the project objective and the business objective. Okay, so the project objective might be to build a tower. The business objective is to create a new revenue stream for the business. Okay. Benefits, expected benefits are, for instance, $1 million every year. See what I mean? So there's difference between the project objective. The project objective is what we want to create in the project. We want the project to create a tower. The business objective, why do you want to create this tower as a company or as an organization? To have or to create a new income stream, because we need a new income stream. This is our business objective. Benefits can be measured again in financials. Okay. No, operations are not project. Again, we have to differentiate between project and operation. Operations are something that is repetitive, like for instance, marketing the apartments to the public or selling those apartments to the public. Now, this is operation. This is not project because it's not temporary. Okay, this is something that we need to do all the time. Okay. Okay. Hope things are clear now. Good. So now there might be a confusion, as as you probably noticed, in defining project success. Some people might define project success depending on achieving the balance between the core constraints. Other people might define project success as achieving the benefits of the project. Anyways, now the proper thing to do, actually, that you will need to do as a project manager is to define the success of the project in the project charter. So in order to avoid any confusion whether this project was successful or not, now we tend to write it down in the project charter. In the project charter, we write down how success looks like, or what is the definition of success in this project, or when is this project considered a success. So you have this definition in the project charter, and after the project finishes, we can go back to this definition and judge whether this project was successful or not. Okay, this is what we basically now do, or tend to do. Now, the modern practice of project management is to define project success right in the beginning, right in the project charter. Okay, but talking generally, again, the project is considered successful when it delivers the benefits, the targeted benefits. And especially, of course, if those targeted benefits are financial, because most of the organizations focus on the financial benefits of any project, and financial benefits are usually measured by different metrics. Those are the metrics that we usually use in order to measure the financial benefits of a project. Those are important for you to understand as a project manager. However, you will not be requested to calculate them. It's not your responsibility to calculate them. Those are actually calculated in the feasibility study and are indicated or summarized in the business case. So it's not you that is responsible for calculating them, but you need to understand them. Okay, again. So we'll explain those financial metrics. And another factor that is important in defining project success is achieving stakeholder satisfaction. Okay, so delivering the benefits, measured, and achieving stakeholders satisfaction. Because again, take this scenario. The project, for instance, finish date was delayed for some reason or other, or the project went over budget for some reason or another. So basically we went over budget, or we went behind schedule in delivering that, or in building that tower. But upon building that tower, we could rent 100% of the apartments out. Would that considered a success or failure for the project? This is what we need to agree on, right? But again, now the most important thing about judging whether a project is successful or not is realizing benefits. This is now the trend. We look at the benefits. The benefits are the main metric of measuring project success. Okay. Okay, let's have a look at those financial metrics that we can use in order to measure the financial benefits of the project. Okay, I think I have a problem with the presentation. 1 second, please. The first metric is, I think most of you heard of it before, or let's take a break, right? I think it's better to take a break before we start explaining those metrics, right? So let's take a 10 minutes break for Maghrib prayers and then continue with the financial metrics. Okay, so 10 minutes and we will be back. Thank you. Welcome back to our lecture, and we're still discussing the measures of success, how to measure success in the project. There was a question about defining the criteria of stakeholders in the charter. I don't know exactly what is meant by criteria for stakeholders, because stakeholders, we don't select them. Stakeholders are every one who's or who impacts or can be impacted by the project. So we don't have criteria. This is the only criteria of defining stakeholders. We don't have other criteria. So anyone, any entity, any person who impacts, can impact or be impacted by the project is considered a stakeholder. Okay. Okay, so let's move back to discussing the financial metrics again. So we started, or we wanted to start with the ROI, return on investment. And I think most of you probably heard of this term before, the ROI. So basically when any organization wants or considers investing in a project, now this is the first question that comes into discussion. What is the ROI? You hear people talking about the ROI, the return on investment. Now, the return on investment is pretty much easy to calculate. The ROI is, you have this formula here, is the net profit that we forecast of the project. So what is the net profit of the project over the cost of investment? So how much do we need to invest in total, the total investment, considering also the cost of the capital, and multiplied by 100% to create a percentage. Okay, so for instance, if a project will give you a net profit of, let's say, 100,000 USD, and the cost of investment is 200,000 USD, then the ROI is 50%, right? And obviously, the higher the ROI is, the better the project is, right? So for instance, if you have two projects, one that has ROI of 20% and the other has an ROI of 30%, then you would select the project with the 30% ROI, right? Because it will give you 30% back on your investment, right? Now, this is a very easy measure again, and most of the time it's very easy also to calculate, but it's not the best metric to use. We will see there are also other metrics that are more accurate than this. No, it's not time dependent, and that's why it's not the best measure to use. That's why there are other accurate measures, okay? No, the ROI is calculated again. The benefit is when you finish the project, because you don't get the net profit until you finish the project, right? So building, for instance, the tower will cost us $1 million, but the net profit of selling the tower is expected to be, for instance, I don't know, $300 US, 300 yes, US dollars, then 300,000 US dollars, then this is the ROI. The ROI is 30%. Okay. Investment cost, does it include project cost and operation cost? Of course. Of course, it includes all the investment required in order to get the net profit. Okay. Now, again, please focus that as project managers, we are not concerned about the calculations and the specific of the calculations, because this is not our job. This is not our responsibility. It's the responsibility of the people who are performing the feasibility study. Okay. But what's important for me as a project manager is that I need to understand that, of course, the better or the higher the ROI is, the better the project is. And it indicates the return that we expect from the project, right? So it's, again, the net profit over the cost of investment as a percentage. Okay. Now we have other probably more accurate measures like the present value. Say, for instance, that someone has suggested 2 projects. One project will give you a revenue of 300,000 US dollars over the period of 3 years, while the other project will give you 200,000 US dollars over 2 years. And they ask you, which project do you go with? Which project is preferred over the other? Here it's not easy to compare because you have a time period, right? And you cannot compare apples to oranges because this is the money that comes back to you after 3 years, while this is the money that comes back to you after 2 years, right? So you need to actually come up with a calculation that gives you the money and the future money, in terms of today, in terms of the present day, right? So this is how we calculate the present value. So for instance, 200,000 USD that I will get after 2 years, how much do you think they are worth today? Are they worth more than 200,000 or less? What do you think as a principle, as a general principle, the money that you will have in the future, do they have the same value as of today or more or less? Yes, they have less value today. Why? Why does 200,000 US dollars that I will probably get after 2 years are less of less value today? Yes, because basically of the inflation. Because we know that in 2 years there will be some percentage of inflation, probably something between, I don't know, 5 to 10%. So basically the money will lose some of its value. You cannot buy the same things that you can buy today. If you have 200,000 today, you can buy more things than, right, after 2 years. If you have the same 200,000, you cannot buy the same things, right? You know that. You know that for sure, because we noticed all that, especially in the last period, right? Your salary now is not getting you the same things that your salary, if it's fixed, that used to buy you 2 years ago, right? And for that, we have this formula. Now, this is the formula that you can use. Again, I doubt that you will be requested to do that in the PMP exam, because again, this is not your responsibility as a project manager. But this is the formula that you can use in order to calculate the present value of the money that will come in the future. So for instance, if you have, again, 200,000 expected, if you are expecting 200,000 US dollars in the future in 2 years, then what is the present value of those 200,000 US dollars? You calculate them, or you calculate it using this formula. So the future value over 1 plus R is the interest rate that usually the banks will give you. Because what we actually here try to do is simulate this calculation with a similar scenario where you give the money to a bank. All right, if you give to the bank 100 US dollars, then the bank will give you an interest rate, right? And after 1 year, for instance, or 2 years, they will give you back 110 or 1 whatever, right? According to the interest rate. So basically, this is the R, the interest rate that usually the banks can give you in this period of time. So the interest rate might be something between, 3 to 5%. and 1 plus r to the power of n. N is the number of years. Okay, so if 2 years, then n equals 2. If 3, then n equals 3, and so on. Okay, and you will notice all the time that the present value is less than the future value, right? Because you have the future value over something. Okay, if the interest is 0, then you will get the same. But this is, of course, not possible, because you cannot give your money to the bank and take the money after 2 years. The bank give you the same amount of money. Your money has lost something again, right? Your money has lost the value because of the inflation. You cannot buy the same things if you get back the same. Okay, so this is the formula. For instance, here you have an example that you can use it. And again, the higher the present value is, the better the project is, right? If halal, if you're concerned about halal, of course you do wadi'a. You don't do interest rates, you do wadi'a. Okay, so this is the formula again. You might need it. I doubt that you will need it, but just in case you might need it. The most important thing again is to know that if you have 2 projects and one project has a present value that is over the other project's present value, then you choose or you select all the time the project with the higher present value again. Okay, I think it makes sense, right? Now, another and a better or more accurate calculation is the net present value. So it's not only the present value that we are calculating, but the net present value, which is the present value, but considering all the cash outflows and all the cash inflows. So all the cash that we're getting minus all the cash that is coming out. So this is the present value of, or the net present value of the project. You don't have, again, to know the formula or the specifics of how we can calculate that. But again, the higher the NPV is, the better the project is. Okay, so we always select the project with the higher net present value. Okay, does that make sense? Now, the most accurate financial measure for us when comparing between projects is the IRR, the internal rate of return, which is the interest calculated when the net present value of all cash flows equals the net present value of all cash inflows. Inflows equals outflows. So what is the interest rate at this point? This is what we call the IRR, and it's considered the most accurate financial measure. Okay. Now, again, we will always select the project with the highest IRR. Okay. So all the metrics that we have mentioned so far, you always select the project with the highest figure, okay, with the highest ROI, with the highest IRR, with the highest NPV, with the highest PV, and so on. The only measure that you actually tend to select the lowest is what we call just, it's not mentioned here. I will mention it here. Okay, which is the payback period. Okay, you can add it here. Why we did not mention it here. The payback period is basically payback period is the period that we need in order to get our investment back. So if you have 2 projects, one project will give you back your investment in 2 years, and the other project will give you back your investment in 3 years, then which project do you select? The one with a payback period of 2 years or the one with the payback of 3 years? Of course, the one with the payback of, yes, of the 2 years. So the less is the better. The less is the better. But the payback period is not considered. Actually, it's the worst financial measure that you can use. Okay. Now, this is the important thing that you need to know. Now, what are or how do you select your project considering the most accurate financial figures or measures? The best is what? Again, is the IRR. After that comes the NPV. After that is the PV. After that is the ROI. And after that, or the last or the least accurate measure, is the payback period. Which means you might get this scenario in the exam. They give you 2 projects, project A, for instance, and project B. Then they tell you project A has an IRR of, I don't know, 0.7 and has a payback period of 3 years, while project B has an IRR of 0.8 and payback period of 1 year. Now, which project do you select? Which project do you prefer? Which financial measure is more accurate? The IRR, right? So I won't even look at the payback period since I have the IRR. I will go immediately with the higher IRR, which is the project B, right? It's the same thing. If you have the IRR, for instance, and the MPV, you won't look at the MPV. You look only at the IRR. Okay, if you have the MPV and PV, then you look at the MPV. If you have the ROI and payback, okay, you get the point? So you need to understand the accuracy of all these financial measures and how to select your projects accordingly, okay? Does that make sense? Okay, let's go back. No, Sayyid, because if I looked at the payback period, yeah, you are correct, sorry. Yeah, if we looked at the payback period, here the payback period is better too, because it's 1 year. Yeah, good point. Okay, and the last also financial measure that you can use is the benefit cost analysis, which is again comparing the benefit with the cost, and the better benefit over cost ratio that you have, the better your project is. Again, so if you have more than one alternative, then you select always the better benefit over cost ratio. And again, you need here probably to find a way to measure the benefits. If they are not tangible, you need to find a way to measure them so you can compare them with the cost and select the better benefit over cost ratio. Okay, so these are the financial measures that you can use in order to select the right project for your organization. Again, to be honest, it's not actually your responsibility to select a project, right? Whose responsibility is it to select the right projects and the right programs? Who can tell me? That was an important point that we explained, I think, in the last lecture. Who was it? Yes, the portfolio manager, the portfolio management. It's the responsibility of the portfolio management to select the right projects and the right programs. While the responsibility of the project manager and the portfolio, and the project and the program manager is to do the projects right. Okay. Okay. So you cannot say the PMO in general, because the PMO can has different, roles and responsibilities. The PMO can have within it can have program managers, project managers, portfolio managers, but those who select, those who make the decision of where to invest, in which projects or in which programs we should be investing, this is the responsibility of the portfolio management. Okay. Based on what? Based on the business analysis, based on the feasibility studies, based on the financial metrics that we have just explained. Okay, so they look at the financial metrics, they look at the financial figures, and they select the best programs and the best project. Okay. Yes, of course. Portfolio management is, again, they operate at the strategic level, right? Because their job is to link strategic objectives with the right projects and programs. It depends on the size, Muhammad. Muhammad is asking, is the CEO considered a portfolio manager? Now, if it's a small company, then yes, most of the time the CEO is taking those decisions, is taking the decisions of where to invest, in which projects and in which programs. But if it's a large organization, then of course the CEO cannot make all the decisions, right? He needs to delegate, he needs to focus more on formulating the strategy again, right? Creating and formulating and planning on the strategy level, while he leaves the decisions of where to invest to the portfolio management team. Okay. Okay. Let's move on now. If you don't have any other question, let's move on now to discuss a new subject in the business context, which is the internal and external factors that influence the project. Because projects are not isolated systems, right? Projects are actually not isolated. They are influenced by the organization, by the environment, by internal and external factors, right? And this is very important for you as a project manager to take into consideration. Because, for instance, we might do a project in Riyadh city, for instance, and the project delivers outstanding results. But when we try to replicate the project or do a similar project in Jeddah city, for instance, you might find the situation completely different, right? And the project might not deliver any good results. Is that correct or not? Why? Because you have different factors, you have different infrastructures, right? You have different economy, probably. You have different weather conditions. You have different society, right? So basically, I need to take into consideration all the time the internal and external factors that might impact the project and the project planning and execution. Now, those can be grouped into two groups. The first group is what we call the EEFs, the enterprise environmental factors, which are the external and internal factors that influence the project. External factors such as, again, the infrastructure, such as the economy, such as the political situation, such as the environmental factors, and so on. And the internal factors, such as the systems that we use in the company. You know, if we are using a mature systems, then this will facilitate the planning and execution of our projects. But if we are using, you know, primitive systems or outdated systems, then this will hinder us, right? Hinder our projects planning and execution. So internal factors such as systems, such as skills that we have in our organizations, such as the culture of our organization, such as the organizational structure in our organization. So those are internal factors that will affect our project planning and execution, right? So these are what we call the EEFs, the enterprise environmental factors. This is the first group of influences or influencers on our project. The second group of influences is what we call the internal OPAs, organizational process assets. And those are basically two things. The corporate knowledge base. If you're a company with 100 years of experience, then you have created and probably maintained a huge database, right, of the previous project files, of lessons learned from the previous projects, of financial databases that you have, and so on. And this is considered a great asset for you because you as a project manager can easily go back to those files, to those databases, to those lessons learned, and benefit from them, right? They will help you plan with more accuracy, and they will help you avoid mistakes and issues that probably someone else has done before you in the same company, right? So this is a great asset, and that's why we call them assets, right? And the other thing is that the company with all of that, you know, lessons learned and databases and so on, they develop processes and policies and procedures for you in order to help you again not fall in the same mistake again. So following those processes, policies, and procedures will again, or will help you plan for your project correctly, and will help you execute your project correctly, and will help you avoid any mistakes that have been easier made, probably by other people before you in the organization, okay? So we call these the internal OPAs, and those are very, again, beneficial for you as a project manager because they help you avoid any mistakes, and they help you avoid any they help you with the information that the company has maintained over the years, with the lessons learned, with the databases, with the financial databases, with the contractors, for instance, that we have used before, and who of the contractors can be used again because their performance was well, and so on, okay? So these are very important, and you will need all the time to take them into consideration. The EEFs, again, the enterprise environmental factors, which are the internal and external factors that influence the project, like the government or industry standards, like the stakeholders' risk tolerances, like the culture structure of the company, like the existing human resources skills, like the company or authorization system, like the marketplace condition, the systems, the PMIS, the project management information system, and so on. Any internal or external factor, any in general, any internal or external factor that influences your project is considered an EEF, okay? And the OPAs, the organizational process assets, which are the processes, policies, and procedures that you should follow while you manage your project, and the organizational knowledge repositories, or the corporate knowledge base, as we mentioned, which are the databases of the previous project files and the lessons learned from the previous projects, okay? So you need to take that into consideration, especially when you are planning for your new project, okay? especially when you are planning for any new project, you need to take into consideration the enterprise environmental factors and the organizational process assets. Now, one of the most important enterprise environmental factors, one of the most important EEFs, is the organizational culture and style, right? Because again, there are no two clone organizations. Every organization has its own culture. Every organization has its own structure. Every organization has its own style. And for that reason, for that specific reason, you might find two project managers with the same title, project managers, working in different companies, but one has a high level of authority and they are respected in the company. They have the authority to make decisions, while the other project manager, for instance, does not have that level of authority and cannot make decisions individually. They have to take permission from the top management for every decision that they make. They don't have that impact on the resources. For this reason, because those organizations have different cultures and different styles. And actually, for you, it's important, if you want to look for a job as a project manager, you need to try to make sure that you are you will have the good place with a good culture, with the good style, organization that understands well what project management is and what's the importance of project management, and understands that in order for you to be successful as a project manager, you need to have a certain level of authority. You need to be able to make decisions. You need to be empowered, right? So this is what we're going to discuss now. So, usually, historically, it was an important subject for the exam, but now again, it's not very important because again, you have only 8% now of the questions touching on the business context, but you might get again 1 or 2 questions about the organizational structure. So according to the organizational structure, according to the company's structures in discussion, you will have different levels of authority over resources. Different organizations have different ways of conducting projects. Different organizations give different, authority to project managers and so on. So we need to understand the structure. And here we have the common, or the basically the common structures or organizational systems that you might find yourself with or within. Let's discuss them. First of all, the organic or simple structure. In the organic or simple structure, there is actually no, structure. It's probably a startup company that consists of 4 or 5 or 10 people at maximum, and they work together. So basically, they switch roles, they switch hats. There is no dedicated project manager. Anyone can participate, in managing the different efforts in the company. So here we don't have actually a structure. It's a simple structure. It's an organic structure, and we don't have like that kind of project management. It's everyone playing the role of everyone, right? Okay, let's move on to the real structures, and let's start by the functional structures. So I'll take this now. Now, the functional structure is probably the most common structure that we see, where the company is organized as following. You have, of course, on top of the company, you have the CEO, And then you have the company structured based on the functions of the company. So for instance, you have the function of finance, you have the function of human resources, for instance, you have the function of IT, you have the function of production, you have the function of marketing, for instance, and so on, right? Of course, each function has a manager, right? So we call them the functional managers. So the IT manager, for instance, the HR manager, the production manager, all of them are called what? Functional managers, right? And we have staff in each department or in each section has its own staff. So we have employees or staff in the finance department, in the IT department, in the marketing, in the production, and so on. So you have Mr. X, Mr. Y, Ms. Z, and so on. This is probably, again, the most common structure that we see all the time, especially in this part of the world. Okay. Now, in this structure, if we want to do a project, for instance, let's say that the CEO has decided that we need a new company website. We need to develop a new company website. So this is a project and we need to do this project. How do we do this project? Who manages this project? How do we get the team for this project? What do you think in this kind of structure? Obviously, we don't have here project managers, right? We have only functional managers. We have the CEO and we have functional managers. So who manages the project? Any suggestion? What usually happens here, no, definitely not the CEO, because he's too busy to be managing a website development project, right? He won't be engaged in that. Yes, he will delegate, but to who? What happens in this structure is basically the CEO will basically assign some of the functional managers in a community, right? You heard the term community before, right? Committee, sorry, not community, committee. Okay. So we create a committee. The CEO might create a committee here of the, for instance, of the financial or the finance manager, the IT manager, the HR manager, okay, and ask them to coordinate the project work. So basically, those people, this committee, will be responsible for coordinating and managing the project effort, right? Now, where is the project team, or where does the project team come from? What do you think? Again, we will take some people from the finance, maybe from the IT, from the HR, maybe probably from other sections as well, right? And we will create what we call a cross-functional team. This team is what we call cross-functional team, right? Because it comes from different functions. Cross-functional team. Okay. And we do this project. This is the way of doing projects in the functional structure. Now, do you think that this way of doing project is the best way of doing project? Does this structure helps and supports project management? What do you think? Yes, the answer is no, for many reasons. The first reason is we don't have here a single line of responsibility, right? Now, if the project fails for some reason or another, who is the person to blame? Is there someone who we can be sure that he was the reason of failure? Is there a clear line of responsibility? No, there's no clear line of responsibility. The finance manager would say that it's the fault of the IT manager. The IT manager would say it was the fault of the HR manager, right? And so on, because we don't have that, clear line of responsibility. This is number one. Number two, those are functional managers, right? They don't have the knowledge of project management. They don't have the experience of project management, right? Their experience is with their functions, right? This guy is expert in finance. This guy is expert in IT. This guy is expert in HR. So when we ask them to manage or to coordinate project, they don't have the right background. Plus, they are busy people, right? They are busy with their department's work. They are busy of their functional work. And you are now requesting them to add additional work, for which they don't have time or enough time to allocate, right? So this is another bad thing in this structure. Other bad things in this structure is the cross-functional team, who are again also employees working in specific departments, and you're now asking them to do tasks and things that might conflict with their daily duties, right? You are asking them to do extra tasks, not related to their functional work, right? And of course, their loyalty will be all the time to their functional manager. So they will focus and they will give the priority all the time to the functional work and to the functional manager, not to the project work, right? Not to the project tasks. They will allocate a little time, as little as possible time, to the project tasks, because their loyalty is to the department, to the function that they are working in, not to the project. Is that correct? Do you agree? Is that clear? So for this reason, this structure is considered actually a bad structure for managing projects or for doing projects. You don't have a clear project manager. You don't have a dedicated person to manage the project. You don't have clear responsibilities. And all people are busy with their work, with their functional work, and you are bringing extra tasks for them in the project, and their loyalty is basically for the functions that they are doing. Okay. Yes, this function is great for the operational work, but not for the project management work, right? So basically, if your organization or if the company that you are working in does not have a lot of projects, they do only probably 1 or 2 projects every year, then it's okay. The structure is okay. But if your company do a lot of projects, then this structure will cause a lot of projects to fail because of the reasons that we have mentioned. Correct? Right? Do you agree? Okay, so how can we improve this structure? What other types of structures that could help us support the project management work? Let's do the following. Let's relieve the functional managers of managing or coordinating the project work. And let's do the following. Someone suggested that we select one of the employees who basically or probably has good leadership skills, who might have some training in project management. This person, for instance, we will select them and assign them as a project coordinator. Project coordinator. So we ask this person to coordinate the project, to follow up with the team across all the departments and make sure of the team doing their tasks at the specified time. Okay. Now this is what we call, if we do this, then we have created what we call a weak matrix structure. Weak matrix structure. Now, why do we call it weak matrix structure? Why is it called weak? Weak because this person who we assigned as a project coordinator is not a manager, right? We haven't assigned this person as a project manager, no. He is assigned as a project coordinator, or sometimes we call them expediter. Okay. And we do this in purpose because we don't want to give them a high level of authority. We want them only to follow up and coordinate. Actually, the coordinator has a little bit of authority, while the expediter does not have any level of authority. Right? So coordinator is a little bit better than expediter. Okay. So it's a weak, and it's now a matrix, because now for the project team now will have to report to 2 bosses. Now this guy will have to report, for instance, to the project coordinator and to the functional manager. This guy will have to report to the project coordinator and to the functional manager. This guy will have to report to the project coordinator and to the functional manager. So we have created that, matrix. People here are reporting vertically to their functional managers and horizontally to the person who is assigned as a project coordinator, right? So now we have this matrix, and that's why we call the structure a weak matrix. It's a matrix, but it is weak because the person assigned to coordinate the project is not given the authority or a high level of authority. He's just coordinating or expediting the project tasks. Okay. Now again, this is a little bit better structure than the functional structure, right? Why? Why is it a little bit better? Because now we have a clear line of responsibility, right? Now the project coordination efforts is centralized at this person. We have only one person doing the coordination and expedition, right? But again, we have a lot of disadvantages. This person himself or herself is not 100% fully dedicated for the project coordination. They have their functional work that they need to do, for instance, in their department. And the team now has 2 bosses or 2 managers that they need to report to, and this is not good when you have 2 managers, right? And you need to report to this manager and you need to report to this manager. This is not great for the people, for the team. And the team is again focusing on their functional work, not on the project management task, because the loyalty is again to the functional manager, especially that the project coordinator or expediter does not have that high level of authority, right? So basically the loyalty is always to the managers, because those are managers and he is only or she is only a coordinator or expediter, right? Okay, so the priority is always given to the functional work and to the functional manager, not to the project coordinator or expediter, and not to the project work, right? Okay, can we fix this or make this a little bit better in terms of project management? Yes. How about, to avoid those or some of those disadvantages that we have just mentioned, how about, yes, assign this guy and give them the right authority. So we make them project managers. We assign them as project manager. We give them the title of project manager. And we also ask them to fully dedicate themselves to the project management. So now they can quit their functional work and focus on doing only the project management tasks until the project finishes. So when the project finishes, they go back to their normal position in the department. Okay. By doing this, we create what we call now, what do you think the name of this structure will be now? It's not weak anymore. It's what? No, it's not also strong. It's what? It's balanced. We call it balanced matrix structure. Why balanced? Because there is now a balance in power between the functional managers and the project managers. So the power is balanced now. This is a manager and this is a manager, okay? Which might again create some confusion in the project team, because now they have the same priority levels. They need to focus at the same time on their departmental work and on the project tasks, because they have the same priority and they have two managers that they need to report to. Okay. The project manager here might be reporting directly to the CEO in this situation, or according, to the size of the company. But again, the project manager here does not report to functional managers. Okay, they report to higher level, because now they have almost the same level of power, the functional managers and the project manager. Okay, now this is a better situation, right? No, because again, we ask them to dedicate themselves to the project. So they are not reporting now to their functional manager. Okay, they are fully dedicated to the project until the project finishes. When the project finishes, they go back to their normal life in the department and they go back to their usual reporting. Okay, great. Now, how can we improve this more in terms of project management? How can we give the project manager even more authority and more control over resources? Let's do the following. Let's relieve this person from this effort. Okay. And let's do the following. And since we have lots of projects going on in the organization and we want to empower project managers more and give them more authority and give them more priority, let's do the following. Let's create a new department, independent department, independent function that is called the PMO, the Project Management Office. And the Project Management Office, now, who are the staff of the Project Management Office usually? Who can be in the Project Management Office? Project managers, right? So Project Manager 1, Project Manager 2, Project Manager 3, and so on. Yes. So if you have a project now, what do? You assign one of the project managers, and notice that those are professional project managers, experienced project managers, fully dedicated to manage the projects in the organization. So for any project, I'll just assign a project manager over the resources, and they can start managing their projects without being impacted or influenced by any of the other functional managers, because now they operate independently within their own department, right? What do we call this structure? What do you think we could call this structure? Yes, this is the strong matrix structure. Obviously, for the reason that project managers now have strong authority levels, and they have even more power on their projects than the functional managers. Okay, and it might be also possible that for some projects you will find the functional manager within the project team. So the functional manager might be reporting to the project manager. In some projects, that's possible in the strong matrix. The strong matrix, this can happen. Functional managers reporting to the project managers. Okay. Now, what's the drawback of this structure? What's one important disadvantage here in this structure? What do you think here the main disadvantage of using this structure? This structure is expensive to operate, right? Notice that you have created a new department, you have hired professional people, and they take, of course, high salaries, right? And they work on projects. But if we don't have projects, what do those people do? They don't do anything. They just sit and take salaries, right? So when you use this structure, you need to make sure that you have the amount of projects that require such a structure. Otherwise, it's going to be expensive to operate, right? Okay. Excellent. Okay, how can we improve more on this? Because we still have the disadvantage of the cross-functional team reporting to two managers, for instance, right? The project team is still reporting to two managers, their functional manager and the project manager, and they are still responsible for doing tasks for their department and doing tasks for their projects. How can we improve on this, or how can we avoid this? How can we do if we want to give project managers more control over resources? We do the following. Now let me save this, for instance. And we do a completely new structure where we have, again, of course, the CEO. But instead of structuring the company on functions, let's structure the company based on projects. Project 1, project 2. So you have project manager 2, okay, project manager 3, project manager 4. So now, see, each project is considered an independent entity, and it has its own resources, its own team, its own staff, and the project manager has full control over their projects and their resources. Correct? You don't have here a matrix. You don't have here the problem of reporting to two bosses. You don't have here a cross-functional team. No, you have teams that are dedicated to their projects, okay? We don't have operation here, or if we have operation, then it will be something that is separate, okay? Some of the projects might have their own functional departments. So for instance, for this project, for instance, you will have an HR department for the project. This can be, okay? Or finance department for the project, or accounting department for the project, and so on. But the idea here again is that you want to give the project manager all the control that they need over their resources. You want to give dedicated resources to the project in order to make sure that this project will be a success. So this is the most mature structure that supports project management. What do we call this structure? How is it called? This is what we call the project-oriented structure. Sometimes they call it projectized structure. You find it in the big companies who have big projects, and the projects need, you know, the kind of independence and the kind of control. Like Bin Laden, like Amar, like Sawady, you have each project is independent project with, you know, with their own staff, with their own budget, with their own resources. Now, what's the main drawback? What's the main disadvantage of this structure? What's the issue here with this structure? The issue here is it's costly, yes. But the issue, the main issue here is we know that projects are temporary, right? So what happens when this project finishes or this project finishes? They will finish at the end of the day. The employees now don't have departments to go back to. We don't have departments, right? We don't have functional departments like previously. They don't have home to go back to. So we will need to release them. Actually, we contract them on the project. In this structure, we contract the staff on the project. So as long as we have a project, the contract is on, the contract continues. But when the project finishes, we release them. Unless, of course, we might need them in other projects. We might find a place for them in other projects. But if we don't find a place for them, we release them. And we contract them on this basis. Okay? So this is the main disadvantage of this structure. Okay? Now, this is, of course, might be a little bit difficult to implement as a structure. For this reason, usually this structure exists with another structure. So we create what we call a hybrid. So you might have some of your projects that need that kind of independence, but your other work, your operational work, for instance, you are working like, for instance, as a functional structure, but you want to give independence for certain projects. So you do this hybrid, you do this composition of functional structure and projectized. Okay. So you can also create some hybrids. But these are the main structures that you might find yourself within as a project manager. Of course, as a project manager, you will always probably prefer to work in a more supportive structure such as the projectized structure, because here you have all the authority and all control that you need over your project. While, for instance, if you work in a weak matrix, then even if you are giving the title of project manager, because sometimes they give you the title of a project manager, but you actually cannot take any decision without going back to some of the functional managers. So basically you are working as a project coordinator. So you are working in a weak matrix, right? So for this reason, again, the level of authority of a project manager depends basically on the structure of the company, on the culture and on the structure of the company. Okay? Any questions? Is that clear? You might expect again 1 or 2 questions concerning the organizational structure. I'll save it here. Okay. Let's go back to the presentation. I think it's time to take a break. Okay, let's take a break before we continue. So these are the structures that we have mentioned. Okay. Yeah, let's take a break, 15 minutes before we continue and explain a little bit more about the PMO, the Project Management Office. Okay, so see you in 15 minutes. Welcome back, everyone, and we continue our lecture. We're still explaining more concepts about the business context and the importance of business context for you and for project management. So you need to understand again the big picture. You need to understand the business context and to tailor the project and the project management practice according to this context. We explained the different types of the organizational structures and the difference of these organizational structures in terms of project management authority, in terms of resources availability, in terms of advantages and disadvantages. Now, we mentioned the PMO when we explained the strong matrix. We mentioned the PMO, the Project Management Office. Now, the Project Management Office is a dedicated department or function that we can create in an organization in order to more support the project management practice, as we explained a couple of minutes ago. But the PMO, as we also explained, can be a little bit expensive to operate. So the organizations tend to introduce the PMO to the organization gradually. So they don't give the PMO, for instance, a full authority immediately, but it's actually given that role and given that authority gradually and with what suits the organization maturity level. And this is a common mistake that we see when setting up PMOs. Many organizations set up the PMO and give the PMO full authority to operate at all levels immediately. And this causes lots of issues and lots of problems because people in the organization, they still don't know or understand what the PMO is, what the PMO is about, what the PMO should be doing, what's the benefits of PMO. So to set up a PMO and ask the people to cooperate with the PMO and give the PMO accessibility and authority levels to operate immediately can be dangerous sometimes, can lead sometimes to a lot of issues, to a lot of change resistance throughout the organization. And that's why we hear all of the time that some PMOs fail. PMOs fail here, there, in this organization, and that organization. Yeah, they can fail. If you don't properly introduce them to the organization, then there's a good chance that PMOs will fail. You need to introduce PMOs gradually and properly. And specifically, we have actually 3 roles that we usually introduce the PMO to the organization by by making the PMO operate at the first level, which is the supportive, and then gradually promote it to the next level, which is controlling, and finally to the last level, which is the directive. Now, what's a supportive PMO, and what's a controlling PMO, and what's a directive PMO? We will explain this here. Now, the supportive PMO is a PMO that we set up in the organization to play only a consultative role. So we ask the PMO to only support the project managers by providing them training, by providing them best practices, by providing them with templates, by providing them with lessons learned from previous projects, but not controlling them, but not requiring them to comply, for instance, with those templates or with those guidelines. So here the PMO is only supporting project managers with whatever they need, from knowledge, from lessons learned, from documents, from templates, and so on. But they don't interfere directly with the project manager work, or they don't control the project manager's work, or they don't require the project managers to comply with certain processes or certain policies, for instance, or procedures. Okay, it's only supportive level, right? The next level of the PMO is the controlling level. Now, at this level, the PMO is still working and doing a supportive role, but we add on that a control level where compliance is required. So the PMO here will control the project manager works, will observe their work, will make sure of them following the policies probably that the PMO sets, the procedures, the methodology that the PMO might create here. So here compliance is important, and the PMO monitors this compliance and makes corrective action when needed, and requires project managers to comply with all the tools, with all the templates, and so on. Okay, so whenever you hear the word compliance, it means that this PMO is a controlling PMO. Okay, it controls, it monitors, it observes, it makes sure of compliance. Okay, now the third and last level of the PMO is the directive PMO. Now here, the project managers report directly to the PMO, and they are considered as employees in the PMO, and the PMO basically manages the projects directly in the organization. So they take control over all the projects in the organization, and they directly manage the projects in the organization. And this is the highest level of operation in the PMO. Okay, you might also expect one question on this, on the different type of the PMOs. So these are the three types of the PMO. Sometimes they're called the PMO manager or the PMO director. So he's a manager. He's probably most of the time is a director, because the PMO director usually reports directly to the CEO. So they are at the director level, which is a little bit higher than the manager level. Okay. Okay, gentlemen, any question? Great. Now, let's have some questions and review what we learned so far. The first question states that the characteristics of a project life cycle vary and should be considered when determining which life cycle is the best for a project. Match, so this is a matching question. Match the delivery life cycle approach based on where it falls on the continuum when considering frequency of delivery and degree of change. So we need to match each life cycle development approach with the continuum. We have, of course, the predictive, the iterative, the incremental, and the agile. We have on the right, high frequency of delivery and low degree of change, low frequency of delivery and high degree of change, low frequency of delivery and low degree of change, high frequency of delivery, sorry, and high degree of change. Okay, what do you think? The predictive goes with what option? What fits the predictive? Yes, when we say predictive, traditional waterfall, so low frequency of delivery because the customer will get their product only at the end of the project, and low degree of change because the scope is clear, right? Excellent. Now, this is one end, which is the predictive. Now, the other extreme end will be what? For instance, the completely opposite of predictive is what? The completely opposite of predictive is agile, right? It's agile. So you will expect the agile to be which option? High with high, right? Yes, high frequency of delivery and high degree of change. Correct. Excellent. So we solved two so far. Now let's see the iterative. What do we know about the iterative? Is it low frequency of delivery or high frequency of delivery? It's low, right? Frequency of delivery and high degree of change. Correct. So these are, of course, incremental, of course, will go through this. So yes, these are the correct answers. See, it's not that complicated if you understand it well. Excellent. Let's move on to the next question. After meeting with several subject matter experts, the project manager determines that the project phases will need to occur one after another. What project life cycle is the project manager using? Sequential, overlapping, iterative, incremental. When there's, a requirement that we will not proceed to the next phase until the first phase is completely closed. This is what we call what? So there is multi-phased, but they are not overlapping. They are, yes, this is what we call sequential. The question here focuses on what? You have phases, but one phase will need to occur before we can proceed to the next phase. This is what we call what? Sequential, right? Okay. A method of managing projects in small incremental portions of work that can be easily assigned and completed within a short period of time describes what methodology? The waterfall, the lean, the agile, the iterative. So we have here the project done in small incremental work. Notice the word incremental. Incremental means it's not iterative. You cannot select iterative, right? D is wrong. But you can select what? Yes, you can select agile, because agile is incremental and iterative. Yes, correct. A project manager has just been assigned to a newly approved project and has been tasked with developing the first draft of the project charter. To better understand the financials, the project manager decides to review the net present value and payback period calculated for the project. Notice this? Notice how it's like the same scenario that we have explained. You as a project manager, you don't need to develop those terms. You need to have a look at them. Which of the following can the project manager reference for this information? So where would the project manager find this information? In the project budget, in the business case, in the benefits management plan, or in the project charter, where, yes, the business case, which is a summary of the feasibility study. Now, the benefits management plan can indicate those numbers, but without explanation, right? The project manager here needs to understand more. He needs to look at the explanation. So he needs to look actually at what? Yes, at the business case, not only the benefits management plan, which will only indicate the targeted benefits. The benefits management plan will only indicate the targeted benefits, but without further explanation. Okay, so the business case is the correct answer. True. What brings together a set of tools and techniques to describe, organize, and monitor the work of project activities? Projects, project management, portfolio management, programs. So what do you call a set of tools and techniques to describe, organize, and monitor the work of project activities? Is this a portfolio management? No, we don't have here a portfolio, right? What do we have here? Yes, this is a project management. This is another definition of project management, right? The tools and techniques that you use to describe, organize, and monitor the work of project activities. Correct. Fine. Next question. Reasons to Live is the top client of a large marketing firm. Trudy is the president of Reasons to Live and has decided to launch a product that leverages new GPS tracking technology. She has high confidence that the project will be a success and asks the marketing firm to make it their top priority by generating a unique campaign that will run in parallel with the project. Billy, a top executive from the marketing company, briefs his team about this unique situation that they have not managed before, and a project is launched shortly thereafter. Billy's project came about as a result of what? Now, notice this scenario here. We have two companies. One company, which is Reasons to Live, who is working on some new projects that uses an advancement in technology. And the other company is a marketing agency or a marketing company that will have a project to market the product of the first company. Now, the question is about the marketing company. Their project came to existence. They launched their project as a result of what? As a result of strategic opportunity or environmental consideration or technological advance or a customer request. The question is not asking us about the first company, why they are launching their project. The question is asking us about the marketing agency, why they are launching their project, because the first company asked them to do that, right? Yeah, it's a customer request, that easy. It's just a customer request. If the question was about the first company, then we could have answered that it came about as a strategic opportunity maybe, or as a technological advance. But the question is not about the first company. The question is about the marketing firm, why they are doing this project, the marketing project, not the product development project. Okay? So you need to be very careful. You need, to look for the right words, the key words. You need to understand the question is asking about what. Okay. Which organizational process asset should you consider when closing out a project or phase? So the question here is about the OPA, right? Which we mentioned that they are very important to take into consideration. So when you are closing a project or phase, which OPA should you consider? Marketplace conditions, configuration management knowledge base, financial management and accounts payable system, procurement policies. What do you think the right answer is? What is the OPA that we should consider when closing a project or phase? Now notice here that the answers given, they don't represent OPAs, all of them, right? For instance, is the marketplace conditions considered an OPA? No, the marketplace condition is considered what? An EEF, enterprise environmental factor. Yes, it's not an OPA. For instance, the financial management and accounts payable system, the systems in the organization, are they considered OPA? No, the systems in the organization are considered EEF. Again, notice, this is very important for you to note, okay? The systems that we have in the organization are internal factors that affect the project. They are EEFs, not OPAs. The procurement policies, are they OPAs? No, again, because those are policies for the procurement, not for the project management. The OPA, if you can remember, are two things only, two groups. The knowledge base from previous projects and policies and procedures that I need to follow as a project manager. So project management policies and procedures and processes, right? Which leaves us with only one option, which is what? Which option? Yes, the configuration management knowledge base, the knowledge base, because the OPA is knowledge base, correct or not? Yes. Again, notice how you can answer the right question by eliminating the incorrect answers. Okay, another long question. You have just started working for a new company. Your previous project management experience made you stand out from your competitors. Your new business cards are being printed with the title of a project coordinator. You discover that the project charter for the project you are working on was never written, so you volunteer to draft one even though the work of the project has started. The vendor who is assisting with the project is already on board and is working with and reporting to the engineering division. You report to the construction division. Which of the following is true? You are working in a weak matrix organization and are in the execution phase of the project. You are working in a strong matrix organization and are in the initiating phase of the project. You are working in a strong matrix organization and are in the executing phase of the project. You are working in a weak matrix organization and are in the planning phase of the project. Now, your title is a project coordinator. That means that we are working in which organization? Weak matrix, right? Okay. Has the work started in the project? Yes or no? Yes, the project has started. Even though the charter was not developed, that doesn't mean the project was not started. The project has started, right? It was a mistake that they didn't develop the project charter, but the work has started. Yes, so A is the right answer. Excellent. Okay, you are a project coordinator and work in an organization that is considered to be weak matrix organizational type. What is the disadvantage of working in this type of organization? You have little authority, you have limited funds, you can only use the waterfall methodology, you have job and role stability. What is the disadvantage of working in a weak matrix? Yes, obviously, right? You have little authority. Correct. Which of the following are types of PMOs? Select three answers. Directive, center of excellence, supportive, controlling. We just mentioned that, right? A couple of minutes earlier. Yes. In the PMI literature, we don't have a center of excellence PMO. Okay, it exists in other literature in Prince 2. but not in the PMI. Excellent, correct. A functional manager hosted a celebration for the project team to reward them for a job well done that led to the successful completion of a major project. It was clear to the project manager that the team was relaxed and enjoying themselves, with some talking about upcoming vacation plans. What type of organizational structure does the project team likely work within? What's the structure here? Strong matrix, weak matrix, project-oriented, PMO. Now we can eliminate some answers, right? PMO, for instance, is not an organizational structure. Project-oriented, remember, when we say project-oriented, then we don't have functional managers. Is that correct? Do you remember? When we say project-oriented or projectized, we don't have functional managers because we have only the structure of projects. So C can be eliminated as well. Okay, so it's either strong matrix or weak matrix. What do you think? Now you might be deceived by the title, right? Because we have a project manager, then we might think project manager, it's a strong matrix. But let's look at the situation carefully. Who hosted the celebration? Who brought the people together and is rewarding them? The functional manager, not the project manager, which means that the functional manager has higher level of authority, right? Yes. You also notice that the people are relaxed, enjoying their time. They are not concerned of losing their jobs, right? Okay, so what kind do you think of the structure is it? Yeah, it's a weak matrix. Okay, yes, it's a weak matrix. Okay, a PMO leader is guiding the organization through agile adoption. What characteristics should she consider when evaluating organizational readiness of agile approaches? If we want to evaluate whether this organization is ready to adapt agile or not, what do we evaluate? Select 3 answers. Focus on long-term goals, management's willingness to change, willingness of the organization to shift its views, focus on short-term budgeting, and metrics. If we want, again, to evaluate whether this organization is ready to go agile, what should we look at? Of course, agile means a lot of changes, so management willingness to change sounds reasonable, right? Or willingness of the organization to shift its views, to change the views. And agile also requires actually focusing on short-term budgeting because we go iteration by iteration, right? And incremental by incremental. Does agile require looking at long-term goals? No, agile does not consider long-term or focusing on long-term goals. Actually, agile focus on short iterative goals, right? Yes, correct. So these are the 3 correct answers, sorry. Okay, another question. Sue is the head of an enterprise PMO. She delivers a presentation at the annual company meeting to describe her roles and responsibilities and the value of the PMO. As part of her presentation, she notes that the PMO is responsible for ensuring that projects, programs, and portfolios are aligned and managed according to the organization's strategic business objectives. What is this referred to as? When you make sure that projects, programs, and portfolios are aligned and managed according to strategic objectives. What is the term for this? Business management, PMI talent triangle, organizational project management, project portfolio management. Yes, this is the definition of the OPM, right? This is what OPM does, organizational project management, to make sure that projects are aligned with programs, with portfolios in order to achieve strategic objectives. It's not only portfolio management, it's all levels, projects, programs, and portfolios. Okay. Okay, another question. A project manager is putting together the project charter and is interested in referencing marketplace conditions to understand the factors surrounding the project. What is a valid input that the project manager can reference to get this information? So the project manager is looking for the marketplace conditions. What is this considered? OPAs, EEFs, project documents, lessons learned, register. What is this considered? The marketplace condition? Yes, we mentioned it, right? It's an enterprise environmental factor. Correct. Another question. All of the following describe a functional organizational structure except for which the functional manager manages the project budget. The role of the project manager is part-time. A project manager has little or no authority. The role of the project manager can be full-time. One of them is incorrect regarding the functional structure. Which one is not correct? When we are working in a functional structure, which one is not correct? Is not correct. In a functional structure, yes, the functional manager manages the budget, and the role of the project manager, which is the committee, is part-time, and the project manager has little or no authority. But the only thing that is not correct, that the project manager can be full-time. No, the project manager cannot be full-time in the functional structure. Okay. Okay, with this we conclude our session today. How are things going with you? How do you find yourself in this course? I hope everything is going well. Excellent. Great. Now you have a couple of days that you can use to go and review the lectures, or at least some points that are important for you. And hopefully, inshallah, we will meet you again Sunday. Okay? Excellent. Take care and have a nice weekend, and be safe all the time, and see you on Sunday, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.